Jenny Stevens, welcome to Empower Network TV.
Thank you, Amos. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. I'm excited because we're going to be talking about the fact that you can do hard things. So let's set it up, Jenny. Where does your story begin?
All
Please.
right. Yes. So as a Midwesterner, I've been born and raised in South Dakota. And here we are very hardy people, and we learn very young that we can do hard things. And that comes with, as far as building businesses, helping other people out, all of those things. But one of the hardest things that I ever did was honestly speaking at my mother's funeral. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But that was the first time where I realized, wow, I can do public speaking. I can start a business and grow one. I can help others achieve their dreams and goals. And it's really just been an amazing journey. And as I keep taking one step faithfully at a time, more doors have opened, which leads me to being on the show with you today, Amos.
That's not an easy thing. I remember when my mom passed away, I spoke too, and that was wow. Talk about emotions.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And so that was your launching part of your launching pad to, and so here you are today. And what do you feel what do you feel we're capable of? What do you feel is the limit on our potential?
Oh my gosh. So the secret, Amos, is there is no limit on our potential. It is like we have an infinite amount of potential in us. It's just, what do you love? And for me, it was really figuring out, you know, when because I was quite young when my mom passed. And it was interesting. I'll tell you a little bit about that story if you're interested in hearing it. Okay. I'll keep going. I saw the head nod. All right.
I mute myself out so I'm not interrupting your
Yes,
audio. Okay.
perfect. Thank you. Um, so basically, when I was a junior in high school, my mother sat us down around the holidays and let us know that she had breast cancer and that the doctors hadn't given her much, it was less than a year, is what they told her. Well, she decided she didn't want to go the medical route. She went an alternative route, and she was here for 4 years. So well past the doctor's expiration date for her. So we got a lot more time with her, which was really special. And when she did pass, she was able to give me and my siblings each a message before she passed. And it was just absolutely beautiful moment. So that leads me to, when we were at her funeral, the pastor sat, we're all sitting in the room before we go into the sanctuary. And she's like, okay, does anybody want to speak on behalf of my mom, right? My mom. And I looked around the room, and it was almost like you go into that slow motion version where it's like you're looking around and you're like, there is nobody in here raising their hands. My brother wasn't, my sister wasn't, my dad wasn't, my grandparents weren't. And I'm just like, well, somebody has to speak. And in that moment, it was like that aha. And that's when I noticed my hand going into the air, and I'm like, I'll speak. And I'm like, holy crap, I am like the shyest person in this room, and I just volunteered to speak. So, I had a little bit of panic, but then this tremendous peace came over me, and I'm like, wow, I can speak. I can deliver a message for this woman that raised me and helped shape me into who I am today, and really honor her journey on this earth. So when it came time, the pastor looked at me, and she had told me ahead of time, she's like, if you decide you don't want to, it's okay. You can just shake your head no, and I'll know that you're not coming up. And when she looked at me, I'm like, yes. And up I went. And I shared some words about her journey here, what she meant to me and my family, and just what I felt she would want me to convey to everyone that had shown up to support our family and to also honor her memory. So it was just a beautiful moment. And that was the moment when I was like, wow, I can do hard things. And if I can do hard things, so can everybody else. And that began my journey into coaching. And at first, it was just kind of my friends and helping them through tough times. And then it got to be more because I have an entrepreneurial spirit. and I love helping people. So I was able to combine those together to become a transformational life and business coach.
What do you think of, okay, in relation to your mother, that's a significant, but the principle is if no one gets up and speaks, it ain't gonna get happen. If no one stands up and jumps, if no one builds it, if no one begins, because a lot of people are waiting around for someone else to initiate them. But don't we have to initiate ourselves in this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we really do. Because when I looked around the room, like I said, it was that slow motion experience where I'm like, nobody's raising their hand. Somebody has to speak. And that's where I knew in that moment, it's like, oh, well, if somebody needs to speak and nobody else is raising their hand, it's me. And it was one of those things. It was the first time where, I love the movie Willow. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. Yes. Okay. Kind of like come back to the forefront the last couple of years. But there's that scene at the beginning where Willow is, he's up in front of everybody on the stage. The elder is trying to pick out the next person that's going to be his apprentice. And Willow hesitates when the elder's holding out his hand to pick a finger. And it was interesting because at the very end, because everybody ends up picking a finger and the elder looks at him and says no. And at the end, he goes, Willow, why did you hesitate? He's like, well, my first gut reaction was to pick my own finger, not one of yours. He's like, and you would have been right. So it's not about doing what somebody else thinks is right. It's about doing what you know is right and having the courage to say yes to that.
So where is this taking you then? Business? What other cliffs have you jumped off of?
All right. So that's a great question. um, so I feel like I've jumped off a lot because I look at the life I've created for myself and I'm like, wow, none of this would have been possible had I not said yes at different points in my life. So from a young age, I was told like, okay, if you want the man of your dreams, you got to start praying for him early. So I did. And yet like almost 20 years later, I've been married to the man of my dreams. He's amazing. And the life we've created, I mean, we built our dream home like about 4 years ago, out on an acreage, and we bought some more land and now it's a farm. So it's like, oh my gosh, I went from being a city girl to, living on a farm. I got chickens and a bunny and a couple cats and some dogs. And I go hunting now. It's like, holy smokes. It's all the things that I'm like, if I wouldn't have said yes to these things, I just wonder, like, I don't wonder too long, obviously, but I wonder how life would have turned out if I would have said no at one point or another. It's like I wouldn't have created what I have today. So those are some of the cliffs I've jumped off of, because getting married is no small feat. I mean, it's not just one day you show up and say yes. It's the hard times, the good times. I mean, it's everything along the way where you could give up and throw up the white flag and say, sorry, I'm not doing any more of this. But it's really just figuring stuff out as you go. And with raising two boys, like I'm a girl. I'm like, okay, what is this whole boy thing about? I've gotten, motherhood was crazy. And it was fun. Like my boys are now 14 and 18 and they're absolutely amazing and they're very different. So figuring out parenting both of my kids who were driven by different things, it's like, all right. So motherhood was definitely another cliff I jumped off of. So, and then entrepreneurship, obviously that brings us to now, is another one where I'm like, well, I don't know if I can go live on Facebook. I don't know if I can go live on Instagram. I don't know if I can start a podcast. I mean, all of these different things where I'm like, I'm just going to do it. It might be messy and it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just have to show up.
Wow. What do you say to people that they swung for the fences, did the business, did the marriage, did the whatever, and then it didn't work out, right? So they got lessons instead of longevity in that, they got lessons.
Yeah.
How do you coach them to get back on the new horse and
Yep.
try again?
That is a great question. So the new horse, whatever that may be, whether it's, seeing who's out there in the world for you, it's just being open to connection, right? Whether it's in business or in marriage or raising kids, it's just that willingness to show up and connect, be a little vulnerable. I'm not saying you got to be super vulnerable and share all your deepest, darkest secrets, but be open and ready for the experiences to come, because they will. And they'll help you build another piece of who you are. And everything that you aren't, the things that didn't fit, that you tried to make fit, those things will start falling away. And that's what I love. If you've ever heard, I think it was Michelangelo when he was carving out the statue of David, he was taking out the pieces that didn't fit, the pieces that weren't the man inside the marble. And that's kind of how I look at our lives, is sometimes as we're figuring out who we are, we try to keep those bits that aren't us, that we think we want. And when they fall away, there's a new freedom in that. And I think that's where, when you do start moving forward to create the life you would love, it's okay to try a couple of different paths, because you're going to figure out what's really aligned with you. And knowing what your vision is, that's what I help people discover, is what is your vision for your life? Because making sure everything's in alignment with that, everything starts becoming easy, and all the extra stuff starts falling away. So that's the advice I would give, Amos.
Love it. What, can you give us some client testimonials?
Sure. So one of the gals I just recently wrapped up some coaching with, I've actually got a call with her a little later today to see how things are going. She had just some really beautiful shifts. And one of the things was she wanted to have dinner with her family. And I'm like, wow, that's a really beautiful thing. Because not only do I do business coaching, but it's also the life piece. And part of it was she had a specific area she wanted to eat dinner every night. And the cool thing is, as we were working together, that table began to be clearer and clearer. And the other part was her faith was really important to her. So I said, if you're going to have something on that table, you can have the Bible on the table. So she was able to create that for herself and her family as a connecting point. So it was faith and food at the table. So it was a really beautiful thing to see. And then also so for the business side, she wanted to do some outdoor events. And we mapped out together. I helped her kind of create, what is her vision for this event? How does she want people to feel when they walk up? What does she want to display? How does she want to be when she's there? And it was really creating that vision and creating kind of a checklist to make sure all the things were there so that it was easy. So you get there, you unload, you set up, you enjoy the event, and then you pack up and go home, and you're grateful for all the connections you've made. So she was able to do that event, and I think she'll do it again. But it's getting over that fear of, oh, well, what if it's not perfect? What if it doesn't turn out the way I wanted? It's like, it's okay. First time is okay. And it was the same when I was coaching kids soccer. You get to see them when they're little and they're tripping over their feet and the ball and each other. And eventually by the end of the season, there is some method to the madness, and the ball starts getting passed. Not perfect, and there's less falling down, and the game looks a little bit more organized. So it's a beautiful thing to watch somebody shift, whether they're playing a sport, whether they're making changes in their business or in their life.
Reminds me, I coached my daughter's soccer when she was 7. And yeah, I remember seeing the progression is pretty powerful as a coach or as a parent or a friend. So what does your coaching look like? Are you one-on-one, group stuff?
Sure. So I do group, and I also do individual. I'm shifting a little bit more towards group just because I'm able to help more people at one time. So that's kind of the direction I'm heading right now, is building out my group coaching, because I did do some one-on-one. And I've got some an accountability pod that I run and a couple other things that way. So I really enjoy the group experience. So
Awesome. How are you getting your clients?
sure. So that's a great question. Some of it is through when I do free events. So I do different like 5-day challenges. I've also got more exposure now with the podcast. I've been doing 5 minutes to freedom. And so they're just 5-minute like segments on whatever I feel like talking about for business, marketing, or life. So, because I'm a big personal development junkie, I'm a lifelong learner, so I love that. I've also done virtual summits to bring people into my world and also get to interview some really cool people. So that's why I love this. This is like a role reversal for me today because I'm used to interviewing and asking the questions and all of that. So, so yeah, those are a few ways that, and then showing up on social media consistently and being out there and taking part in other challenges with other coaches that are maybe specialized in an area where I'm not. So I get to make connections that way as well.
Well, I'd love to hear you here, Jenny, and please drop any and all links afterwards. I'll tag you in the post.
Perfect.
Any closing words for Empower Network TV members?
Yes. So guys, here's the thing. You can do hard things. And sometimes it's the little things, right? It's little things like just showing up for someone that you love. Sometimes it's showing up for a stranger that needs your help. And it's all of that. So that's one thing I do want to leave you with today is you can do hard things. If a shy girl that grew up here in the Midwest, hardy as hardy can be, like if I can stand up in front of a group of people that I don't know half of them and say some words about a woman that meant the world to me, and then I went on to hopefully become the woman she thought I was going to be. I hope, right? I'll find out someday. Yeah, you can do it as well. So I just want to let you know if you need to borrow my belief in that, guys, borrow my belief that you can do it. You can do hard things. Say yes to the things you love.
There you go. Perfect way to end it. Thank you so much, Jenny Stevens, for being here. Empower Network TV, please reach out to Jenny if what she said has impacted you. Let her know what you appreciate, and we'll end the broadcast here. Thanks, Jenny.
All right. Thank you, Amos.